Good evening and welcome to our DEI meeting for April 24th. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have to review the minutes from last month's meeting, so if you'll take a minute, Deb sent those out today. No rush, but does anyone motion to approve the minutes? Blanca, thank you. Does anybody second that motion? Thank you, Emma. Excellent. So we will move forward with the reports from the committees. In no particular order. Community engagement. Did one of us volunteer to talk about our last meeting?
Sure. I can do that. I think as we've kind of noted earlier, it's really hard to get people together in the springtime, but we're able to. 3 of us attended, and the topic was talking a little bit about those fireside chats. The last one, we actually didn't have anyone attend either the noon or the evening chat. We will move forward though with our next one in May, again, noontime and 6:30, which will be virtual again. And then Anjana also was, she was great at giving some information about the rally, the student rally that's coming up. And unfortunately, and Chris, I hope it's okay if I talk about the next subcommittee as well with communications, just because we were unable to meet that night just due to everyone's schedule. However, we'd really like to get the students together with the communications team to kind of really have a way to make sure that community members are knowledgeable about the event, when it is, what's happening, and make sure that we can invite people from, all over the community. So that was pretty much the conversation for engagement, which kind of, and we were unable to meet for our communications.
Great, thank you, Leah. Does communications also want to speak about what they met on?
We didn't meet. So
I thought that was the next meeting that we're combining.
Well, maybe we'll have to. So we couldn't meet. There was just, I think there was a lot going on for everyone that evening. So we'll have to convene another time.
Yep, it gets busy this time of year. Thank you. Research committee?
Do you want me to take that, Derek? I know we were going to have Shaka.
Sure.
I'm going to please though jump in because I my notes are sporadic because I wasn't intending on presenting tonight. So I'm sure there'll be things I miss. So we took a long, hard look at the climate survey. It's specifically for the families, and it has such a broad range of questions that if we're going to try and make it smaller, so it's going to be more apt to have people complete it. Derek went through with us for some that may have been overlapping questions. And also it was mentioned to change the demographics, the wording of the beginning. I guess it's written more along lines of the census, which is not appropriately written necessarily. So certain things like for gender, for example, needed to be changed. We had a good conversation about dietary needs and how well the school addresses that. Since many of our families rely on healthy food choices and how that's a direct cognitive connection to what they're taking into their bodies and what we can set for families. So Derek, please feel free to jump in on anything else that you think I'm missing. Specifics.
I have no real specifics, just that because I took so many notes in the margins of my book, which is not with me. We basically focused on streamlining the questions. A lot of people on the committee had already suggested ways to limit the questions and to get to the heart of the matter, so to speak. So we had a lot of discussion around how do we make this meaningful so that we can get the most amount of parents participating. And it was a really good discussion, and I think we got a lot of accomplished because I had a ton of notes. So there's good participation.
And I'll second that. We also discussed making sure that the questions are not implicitly or explicitly biased in any way, and or targeting towards specific populations. And so we also discussed that in detail.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for winging it, Nina, and for bringing it in. Tamika and Derek, how about student voice? Do we have somebody to speak on that committee?
Yes, I can speak to that committee. Both of our students are at, I believe, one is at the college fair. I'm not sure about the other one, but tonight. The Student Voice Committee met and we looked at the student questions for the climate survey and went through them. And we looked for ways to limit them to make sure that students would answer them. We went round about, I think the discussion that came out of that is how can we support students more directly and make sure that they are, especially student leaders, so that they can sustain their organizations and help bring more input to the table. And they also talked about the need to, how should I put it? To have more student input on the Student Voice Committee. So we discussed opening up the committee to allowing other students to come in during the rest of the semester and be able to share their perspectives. I think Varshini, our staples are Varshini and Shreya. They are always consistent about coming, and they were like, we'd love to have more voices there. We don't want to feel like we're representing everybody, but we do have some concerns. So we talked about what got them into student activism and what made them want to have a voice, and see how we can support that and to help, share that energy with the rest of the student population and see what we can do to make connections. We also talked about the fact that the DEI is opening office in the high school now that we have office space, and that we're going to be able to connect with students in that fashion as well.
Great. Thank you. So thank you all for the reports from the subcommittees. Next, we have DEI in action.
Hi, yes, that's me again. So lots of things happening this past month. I've been working with a lot of different teachers. There's some ELA teachers at FMS who are just starting their Reading a Refugee. And so I've gathered materials and ideas for that group, and I'm really excited to go into their classes as they, begin that unit. I think it's going to be, and I actually had not read it, and I read it for the first time, and I think it's so wonderful. Those stories that I also, Derek and I also attended the cultural fair, which is, the first time that we've been there. And I thought that students did such a wonderful job, and it was a great day. And I really love seeing the third graders come in and join. And I thought that was really wonderful to include them. I am working with the high school math department on a math panel symposium for early June. We have invited a diverse group of individuals who use math in their careers. So we have 2 college professors, we have a fashion designer, we have a director of the Department of Health, we have an engineer turned project manager. And so students are going to read their bios and generate some questions for that. And once we have a day like a set, then we'll let you know. I think it should be in early June. I think the 6th, but don't hold me to that yet. And I also have met with another FMS ELA teacher on an activist research project that she is beginning. And so we've been talking through that. Another social studies teacher who is preparing for a future lesson on the Trail of Tears. A health teacher wanting to revamp her nutrition unit. And she's actually, tomorrow I'm going to be in her class because she's doing this cookbook mini lesson where I help gather a variety of different cookbooks from different, cultural backgrounds. And one of them is actually Anissa Wahid's Moroccan cookbook. So students are going to be able to take a look at that and use some of those for inspiration as they move forward with a project. Derek and I have also this month joined the equity leadership meeting at BOCES. The main focus of that meeting was to take a closer look at the dress codes in the area schools. The 2 of us plus Tish Barnett from Niskuna and Alan Gadsden from Bethlehem have been asked to kind of come together and work on affinity spaces for area teachers. So that's something that, the 4 of us are going to try to head up. And last but not least is the 2 of us have been working together with students as they prepared for the Elevating Student Voices Youth Summit, which happened today. It was such an amazing event. And we had our very own Connor Webb, who was a panelist. And it was so great to hear all the different things that, he had to say about our school district. And the keynote speaker was also Lieutenant Governor Delgado. So that was a great thing to hear here, and having all of the students from the different schools. There was a showcase of what's been happening. So I think that there will be some more, hopefully, connectiveness between different districts and seeing some overlaps of what's happening DEI related, not just in our school, but how we can help each other. So that's pretty much what's been going on, DEI in action.
I see Mary has her hand up. Mary, did you want to add something?
Yes, if I can. Just a couple of things. Jumping back to the our outreach. Our next DEI fireside chat, I think, is the 21st, and that's the same day as the budget vote. Am I correct, Marie? So is that something we should think of? I mean, you can still have it. It's virtual.
I don't see why not.
So just go with it.
I would go with it.
Okay. Another thing is, when we were talking about the last fireside chats, although I won't be a part of this committee next year, I would just really encourage if we can revisit going out to the community, much like we go out to the kids in the schools. It's probably something we would actually have to start now to look to. It's a lot of work. Where can we do the outreach? Marie had mentioned Regency Park, having an opportunity for parents. They can walk, nobody has to drive. They can come there if they want. At different pockets, maybe, some of the local churches would host us. But really look at getting out and reaching out in the community. So kind of bring it to them rather than waiting for them to come to us. And another thing that I would like to bring up is, I recently forwarded Dave Austin, our athletic director, an article about a baseball team in Florida that had this whole underlying issue with racism. And it was really being fueled by parents and some certain athletes. And they actually wound up losing their entire season. And coaches were dismissed. And, I'd like to think perhaps instead of just talking to athletes, I talk to my team every year. about what's expected of them, but maybe having mandatory meetings for athletes and parents and having the DEI representatives there and talk to them and tell them, these are our expectations. And a lot of times these kids are looked at as leaders in the school, our athletes are. And it would be a great opportunity for them to be able to build on that. And, athletes cover everything from children with learning disabilities to different to LGBTQ to races and ethnic origins. And it's a big blanket of people that I think would be a great opportunity to try and reach with their parents, not just the athletes. So that was it.
Thanks, Mary. Mike?
Mary, I think that's brilliant. The situations that I deal with in terms of disciplinary investigations sometimes involve student athletes. And I think in that parent meeting, telling student athletes that your behavior in locker rooms, your behavior on the field, your behavior in spaces where there's not adults matters. And I also think that, I'm going to peel the onion off a little bit and say that there's a privilege piece to this, right? So our student athletes sometimes feel protected when we address behaviors and situations that don't align with Guilderland's values. And I think we could be more explicit on the front end in terms of instructing parents, especially. It's not the kids. The kids' behavior, that's just what they do. It's the parents who we have to be explicitly clear with. When student athletes act this way and represent the Guilderland Dutchman, there will be some consequences. And I echo your suggestion, Mary, and I think it's a great one.
Yeah, and Mike, you made a really good point. Is these kids do have a lot of alone time, whether it be at a simple drill you're doing as a team, whether it is the locker room or the bus. And Guilderland athletes go all over, not just the Capital District, but everywhere to represent us. And I make it very clear that to play is a privilege, not a right, that you earn it. And earning that isn't just your athletic ability. It is you as a student and you as a person. And I just think it'd be really important, especially after reading this article, that we do get parents involved to hear the same message that the kids are hearing.
I think, Mary, to your point, Mary, I think the kids are the easy part. We can teach them, right? It's not the kids, the student athletes, we can teach them the expected behaviors. It's the parents that we need to communicate when the expected behaviors don't happen. Here are the consequences. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the conversation that we need as a system to continue to have.
Marie has requested that the article be shared with her just out of the chat. And Derek, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to relate that my predecessor, Matt, and Mr. Maza in the high school did have a program for the athletes together. I've met with Mr. Maza about that program and seeing how we can revise it or revamp it to reinstitute it next year. We just haven't had the time to get together and schedule time, but that will be a project that we'll be bringing to fruition, hopefully for the next fall.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you have to remember is because it is so competitive, athletes don't want to say anything. Mm-hmm. Because they're afraid that how is that going to look to the coach, or the coach isn't going to like me anymore. And you're getting the pressure from their parents to, you can get a D1 scholarship, everybody's a D1 athlete, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of this it goes, under the table, people you don't realize. And, it's coach's responsibility too. You really have to have the pulse of your team to know what's going on. And have them trust you to come to you. So I think it'd be worth a good, not just athlete, but parent and athlete opportunity. And yes, Maria, I will share that with you.
I think that'll also play a little bit into the climate and culture kind of conversation too, because a team is made up of all those individuals, and sometimes it's peers that it's hard to speak out against your peers. I mean, that's a Harry Potter reference right there. I also think if you're thinking about doing something mandatory, making sure that it's accessible virtually and all those other ways, because I would hate to see families that, I think we think of Gillen families and, oh yeah, of course an athlete's family can come to a thing at the school, but not everybody can. Anyone else want to speak in on the DEI in action? I wanted to throw a plug out for Maura Nichols, our media specialist here at FMS, who's cultivated an amazing collection of LGBTQ affirming titles. So she spoke to the Alliance yesterday. And at this point, she's got so many titles in our library that she can actually not put them all out on tables and still have an amazing, impressive selection there. So my students were really excited to check out books, new books, old books, just making sure that everyone feels included. And it's even ahead of Pride Month, which will be in June. So that was exciting for my students to be able to see that. Next is our membership update.
Well, that would be me. And I want to be the first to say that for those of you who are rolling off this big committee that meets on the big screen, you are always welcome to continue your work on subcommittees, Mary and others. So we are at that point in the school year where we are working to recruit the next class of DEI members. We have already reached out to students and staff, and we're collecting letters of interest right now. The deadline for students and staff is Monday, the 29th. So we've got some letters, but we could use some more, particularly among staff. So those of you on this call, if you know somebody who you think would be a good addition to this team, a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, I think he would be great, can really help if someone is, not sure they want to do it, not sure how big of a commitment it is. So sometimes when we reach out, we can bring people into this work. We still need to do outreach to the broader community and the parents. We'll be doing that very shortly through Parent Square and a letter to the editor to the Ultima Enterprise to get greater community support. But in that same vein, if you know a parent or a community member who you think would enjoy this work and have things to contribute and perspectives to share, please, use your role on this committee to recruit and tap the next generation. So the plan is for us to have all of our letters of interest available for the Board of Education to look at their May 7th board meeting. And then the new members would be appointed at the June Board of Education meeting, and then join us at the June meeting of this group. So that's the plan, and we just need more letters, and we're looking forward to, continuing this good work.
Thank you, Dr. Wiles. That was April 29th was the deadline for
Students and staff. So Monday, essentially. And as Mrs. Sims said to me today, it's a soft deadline because we really just need to be able to put letters in the Board of Education packet that gets put together on Friday, May 3rd. So we're not going to say, oh, it came on 30th and therefore you can't do it. That's not how this works.
Awesome. Thank you. That leaves us, I think, just with the learning component, Derek. You are muted.
Okay, wonderful. I am going to share my screen. Today, our learning component is just about the climate study. So I want to get a little background to everyone about the what is a climate study, what is school culture, and why are we even doing this? So, okay. And I will share and put it up. Let's see. Okay, is it okay? It is showing up. It's a bare bones slideshow, so bear with me. I didn't want it to necessarily be so much. Let's see. Okay. All right. The first question is, what is school climate? I took this definition from Panorama Education. For those of you who may not know who Panorama Education is, they are one of the major providers of student school climate surveys, nationally speaking, and they stole their definition from the National School Climate Council. But essentially, school climate is referring to the quality of and character of school life. And what it's really reflecting is the personal experiences of all of our stakeholders, parents, students, and school personnel, and trying to figure out how everybody is experiencing the environment that they're in, and what are there any patterns to this behavior across these different interest groups. School culture also refers to the values and shared beliefs and behaviors of various stakeholders within a school community. It reflects the school community's social norms, the everyday interactions and routines. Just to get a picture of what both of those mean, school climate is basically the sum total of the lived experience of all of our stakeholders. The focus is on understanding the different perspectives that individuals have as a result of their lived experience. And that's why we do these surveys, is to get a sense of what people are experiencing and what their individual perspectives are. We look for trends, we look for patterns, but there may or may not be there. There may be outliers out there, people that we need to pay attention to. So the climate isn't one particular thing, but it's a mosaic, if you will, of many different perspectives, and trying to look at them and take a step back and see the bigger picture. School culture is about the shared values, beliefs, the rituals and ceremonies that happen, the artifacts that schools collect over time, the systems that they put in place, and the rules that influence the behavior of people within that organization. If we think about some of the traditions at a school, some of the activities that happen that really govern students' behavior, those are the types of things in the school culture that we look at. So the real question, I guess, is how do we view each of these? And why do we look at school climate in particular? One of the main reasons is federal reasons. The Every Student Succeeds Act is federal legislation that it recognizes the relationship between school climate and student outcomes. And as a result of that, state agencies were asked to include a school climate or safety survey in their accountability frameworks to make sure that schools were looking at some aspect of the non-academic indicators of why students are succeeding. So there is a success component to this in terms of student outcomes academically, and the relationship that a positive school climate or school culture can have. For me, this last sentence, thanks, Mike, is assessing school climate is not like taking the temperature in a room, but understanding how everyone in the room is affected by the temperature. If you look at the temperature as the culture, the school climate is trying to get us to read the room. I don't know if anybody's ever been asked to read the room when they walk into it, but you can see, oh, wow, the tension was really thick when I walked into the room, or I'm feeling getting these things. We assess school climate to get a sense of how everyone is dealing with what's happening, so that we can figure out what is the best way to support those people in an equitable fashion. And I think that's the distinction of school climate. School culture can influence that. Some of the routines and the systems that we do, we're always tweaking. I've been working with some of the principals talking about how they leverage homeroom, how they manage student groups, how we do lunch, how we do all of these things has an impact on students' behavior and how they interact. So the school culture, we have 5 different elementary schools and coming into one. So Mike Laster at the middle school sort of inherits a coming together that is really interesting and pays particular attention to the culture of the school and how that evolves. And then those students have to prepare to go into the high school and to transition once more. So each of those places necessitates us, taking the temperature at the different levels of our organization and trying to figure out how people are reacting to what's happening in our schools so that we can design better experiences and make the experience more positive for as many people as we can. Some people ask where we get our school climate survey from. We looked at the National Center for Safe, Supportive Learning Environments. Basically, the U.S. Department of Education puts out free student climate surveys. We looked at them and said that they were pretty sound. They've been validated. They've been already vetted so that we know that they're reliable instruments, and we want to adapt them to meet our school environment. So we ended up settling on them. It is free. They offer free, but they also offer resources and assistance. And thankfully, that was already part of what was in the Thought Exchange platform that allows us to not only leverage these free climate surveys, but also be able to drill down and to offer drop downs to get narrative responses. And it also allows us to cut the data in many different ways that we probably couldn't do otherwise, based on how we set it up for our students, families, and staff. So there's a lot that we are able to pull from it, and basically it comes from this source. Specifically, what it measures is our 3 different areas, or they call domains: engagement, safety, and environment. And while we're not looking at all of the subtopics underneath those 3 areas, we are going to be looking at the ones that are most germane to our student experiences. So we're looking to cut down the amount of questions. Depending on the survey, they range anywhere from 43 to 105 questions. So we're looking at specific areas that are germane to DEI and the lived experience of our students. That we think would be we can get the most bang for our buck from that climate survey. So that's what it measures: engagement, safety, and the environment. And we're going to be looking at each of the subtopics and pulling questions to tailor it to each group so that we make sure that the survey is not long, but it is meaty and robust, and that we get at the information that we need to pull from our community. Lastly, who will analyze the data? Largely our building level DEI action teams will analyze the data during the summer months for the purpose of setting their SMARTY goals for the academic year. So they will be coming together at some point to look at this data. And along with that action, myself and our DEI TOSA, Leah over there, will be overseeing that analysis and trying to coordinate the development of a district report, something we can report out and share with the community and with our board and everyone, and see how we can have how we can use this information to look at our ecosystem and really start to develop a strategic vision for our DEI, not just addressing immediate problems, but being very strategic in how we really want to develop and grow our DEI initiatives in our school district. So I just threw a lot of information at everyone. Are there any questions about the distinction between school culture and school climate, and the nature of the test, or the survey, I should say? Mike.
Can you just clarify for everybody the timeline and how it's going to roll out in terms of implementation so that everybody knows what the plan is? In terms of like when we're going to take the survey, when we're going to see the data, all that stuff?
Yes. We have already met with Thought Exchange platform. We have our marching orders and how to pull together our questions. We're looking to be able to put this out to our faculty, our students, and faculty, students, and who am I missing? The parents would be last, but we want to make sure that within the school. Oh, I know, because faculty and the survey distinguishes between instructional and non-instructional staff, plus students. But we want to get that out to them in May. So we'll be looking to put that out in May, and then after the budget is blown over and all of that has been done, we would like to present that also to the parents as well, and follow up with them.
Derek, I can jump in. We're looking right now at the week of May 13th for our students and staff. For our students, we're hoping to carve out a finite period of time, whether it's homeroom or a portion of a class, for the students to take the survey. We're working on having the student survey take about 10 minutes. So it's not going to be an onerous, set aside an entire instructional block of time for students to do this. We're trying to be really strategic in the selection of the questions across those domains to give us the information we need without taxing our students and losing instructional time. The staff survey will be a bit longer. We're actually meeting tomorrow to kind of fine tune what those questions will be and how it will get laid out, and what questions we might want to ask people to dig a little bit deeper into. We're going to hold off sending the survey out to parents until after the budget vote, because we send a lot of stuff to families up until that point, and we don't want it to get lost in the shuffle of all that, mid-May communication. So that's the plan. Should have it wrapped up by the 1st of June or thereabouts.
Oh, we have some hands. Chris?
Just, did you mention the what grade levels the students are going to be taking this?
It's there's 2 surveys. One is grades 3 through 6. So it's structured sort of developmentally appropriate for the elementary. And I know 6 is middle school, but it's technically still elementary. So 3 through 6 and then 7, 12.
Is it?
Wait, what's that?
I'm probably having the same thought Mike is having. Is it possible for the 6th to take 7th just because it's the end of 6th grade and they are closer to being 7th graders than they are to being 5th graders? Not that it's, I haven't seen the question, so maybe it doesn't really matter, but.
We're going to look at the questions tomorrow. We'll keep that in mind as we look. Like if they're close enough, we could do 6, 12, probably. We just would have to, as we structure it, let people know. Derek, why don't you take down your screen? I don't think we need to see the slide.
Okay.
We can see people. There's people.
Yeah.
I would echo Chris's. I'd love just to send one link out, 6-8. Developmentally speaking, I haven't seen the questions either, so I don't know whether or not we'd get valuable feedback from our 6th graders in terms of the different, questions. But in terms of logistics, it would be easier if we could just do one 6-8.
Okay. You know, the questions are statements that are students rate using a Likert scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So it's very, very intuitive. They're declarative sentences. They're short sentences. The vocabulary is not hard for anybody in any of the tools. And so one of the things that we're working on is which of the questions, like if you say, I'll just make this up, like, I feel safe at school. And if someone were to click strongly disagree, that would be the kind of question that would prompt a place for the next level. Like, and I'm making this up because I'm not a survey writer. What about school makes you feel so unsafe? And so we can gather more than just, wow, we have 15% of our student body who doesn't feel safe at school, but to get at the why.
Yes. I love the fact that there's a narrative capability within the Thought Exchange platform. And also, you know, not to get too techie, but they have some really great AI tools that help summarize and bring that information together for us in some very unique ways. So I think we're fortunate to have the platform to go along with this particular survey, I should say. But I think one of the keys with survey research is making sure we get as much participation as possible, which is why we're paying so much attention to structuring it and looking at the number of questions and making sure that it's accessible to people. The other part of survey research is the evaluation of it, to be able to cut the data in many different ways and be able to do deeper analysis and deep dives. And so being able to have that narrative side is important, and being able to make sure that we have a broad set of eyes analyzing it across our different contexts, whether it be the elementary, our building level DEI teams, is going to be critical to this work. So we know that it's a snapshot in time. And we want to collect a series of snapshots. So it's almost going to be like time-lapse photography. You're going to be able to see some changes over time that will give us some broad themes and things to look at. And hopefully will start to help us dial in a little better on how we can make DEI more responsive to the lived reality of our students and the perceptions of our families and teachers and staff in our schools.
Emma, you've had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question or raise a point?
I just had a question. Derek, on the last slide, it said that the school DEI action teams, is that referring to the school's DEI team?
Yeah, the building level teams that are in each level, they will come together during the summer and look at the data.
I guess my question about that is that, like, for example, at my school, we already submitted our summer curriculum work and there was a deadline for that. So I was just curious when schools were going to be told when this data would be coming and what time would be provided for that, because we already have a whole, I'm just curious.
So I am working with Rachel Anderson to make sure we have the capacity to bring together our equity action teams all on one day. We're looking, I think, around the third week of July. I don't have that calendar in front of me. And this is in full recognition of all the other requests that have come in. This is a very high priority for the school district. We heard from the equity action teams when we gathered back in January, which seems like a million years ago now, that they really wanted time together and to be able to look at data. So that's what this will be about.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think just as a teacher, getting as much notice about the meeting date as possible so we can plan for that, and just so we don't plan our curriculum work around the same time, so as many teachers can go as possible.
We're actually tomorrow in our district office team meeting, we're going to look at pinning down the date. So
perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right, so if you had to say, what is school climate? How would you put it in a nutshell? Nina. Oops.
Sorry, I'm muted. I think it's an indicator to areas that districts can hone in on. And I think it's very important that we're doing it. But I also think that we need to keep in mind that it's not the only indicator. So I mentioned this briefly before, but I think it's important to talk about some of the issues that may not come forward through that. And we have to remember that there might be other issues underlying that are still happening. I don't know if we'll be sure that like every student will complete it or every family will complete it. I know that in certain districts, for example, some of the communities don't have time to look at the surveys or may not even recognize it come through their emails. And sometimes those are the families that need to respond the most and we won't ever hear from them. So I think we need to just make sure that we're covering all of those bases. And along those lines, I think it's important to talk about just the general problem that's happening now across many campuses. And that's the increase of anti-Semitism. And I think that I've seen aspects of it in the district as well as districts across the area, incidents happening daily basis. And I think that it's something that might not come through the climate survey just because I know that a lot of people that are in that community may not feel comfortable coming forward with it because that's kind of been the way of survival in that area. And I think that's one example of why we can't just solely rely on the climate survey.
Mike.
I would just encourage anybody who is impacted by any type of that experience, Nina, to speak to an adult in a trusting manner in the school district so we can investigate it and deal with it. Because those behaviors and those type of assaults are not acceptable. So while I understand people, students who experience those negative, interactions are hesitant to report, I think without reporting, we can't address the issue. So I would encourage people that if they're experiencing those things that you're referencing, to report that to a trusting adult so we can follow up and discipline the students who are doing that.
Mary.
Yes, just to kind of echo what Mike had just said, and Nina, I appreciate what you're saying. I know we have families that on both sides of the issue in the Middle East that are affected. And I think like Mike is saying, any of those students need to know that they have a trusted adult that they can feel safe with. And if it's a trusted adult outside the community who then needs to follow up with the school, so be it. But I know I'm just thinking back of people that I've coached that I know have family in Gaza, and it's very difficult. So I think we're a very diverse community, and we're really feeling it in like an umbrella impact of this. So I think get that message to the kids that no matter what, you should always know that you're safe in school and there are people who care about you that you can go to.
Chris.
I mean, just another step on that is are some of the questions on the survey about having a safe adult, because we do a survey as it is about safe adults. So maybe this can make that survey obsolete, which would be lovely. One less survey. I'm sure the kids and the teachers will all appreciate that, but sometimes it's hard at middle school because kids will say, no, I don't have a safe adult. And I'm like, I talk to that kid every week. But the adult can be then the person who helps build that rapport into talking to. I mean, I know I bridged the gap with Matt in a few times, and I would definitely do that with you, Derek, as well, or you, Leah, just helping those kids find resources to get their voices heard, to make sure that nothing's falling through just because people don't feel like their voice is important enough, because every voice is important.
Yes, we definitely recognize the need to make, have a multifaceted approach to DEI work. I think that Climate studies are standard. Just like when you go to a doctor's office and you get your standard workup, this is part of the DEI standard workup. And it doesn't mean we're going to catch everything, but we can catch some pretty easy low-hanging fruit and some things that may not be obvious to us at first blush, but when we take a little deeper look, can find these things. But in order for this climate survey to be effective, we have to make it accessible to a great number of people. The great thing about what we're doing with the platform is that if we make it confidential for our students, we'll be able to track who's the participation rates and what populations, and we'll be able to figure out by who participates or who doesn't participate, what type of outreach we may need to do and what other work we may have on our hands. The wonderful thing about doing SMARTY goals is that we make sure that we're inclusive and that we're equitable. And part of inclusivity is looking at that, at the data and saying, who did we miss? Who did we not get? And of these narratives, what other work do we have to do? And that's where the goal setting and the things that the work we do after this will become more relevant and more important, so that we can branch out and figure out how we can collectively address some of these issues, to make sure we have as much on the table as possible. There's always going to be that informal network or things that are happening that we're not aware of, but the extent that we can get a lot of these things on the table and start talking and working on these things, the better off we'll be. The fact that some of these populations have had student groups in the past and don't have them now says that something has changed in our climate that we need to think about, because students are going through cycles of participation and non-participation. We're not sure what that's connected to yet, but that's what we're looking into. So this is the beginning of a journey, and I'm hoping that as we continue to do this, we'll keep uncovering things, because trying to track at least student perceptions and attitudes of student climate is like trying to step in the same water twice. As someone says, the water keeps moving, the students keep aging up and they keep moving. So it's never, you're trying to get an accurate picture, but it's a snapshot for a place and time. And it's helpful, but the work is much more, has much more depth than that. So that's why we're trying to get everybody involved and make our net as responsive as possible. So getting people involved in having that representation on the DEI committee and the people who are going to cut this data, that's that other half, making sure that we continue to have that representation from all of the schools and our leadership and segments of our community to make sure that these voices are amplified and that they're heard. So that's the nature of our work, and I'm glad that you're all part of it. And as much as we take steps to accomplish these things, there are still further steps that we can go. We're going to get better and better at this as we go along. But this is a great tool to have in our tool belt. Are there any other questions or concerns that we should address before? All right, then I guess we'll conclude this aspect of the learning module and put it back in the hands of Chris.
To which I will echo what you just said. So don't forget that April 29th is the deadline, the soft deadline. So encourage folks who you think would be valuable contributors to this group. And don't forget that we can still serve as we step off of this group onto the subcommittees. So I still expect to see Mary in those. And do I have, our next meeting is May 15th. That's what we have on the agenda. So do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? I see Nina's hand, and I'll take Mary as a second. So you all have a lovely sort of springish evening, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good night, everyone.